So while we take a short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and now we're going to get back to your host.
Hey everyone, this is Dave. Meckie's traveling, so you have me for 1 hour. And no, it won't be the Stingy and Zappy show, or the Pinchy, I think, and Zappy show. It won't be one of those. It's okay. This is Platos Cave. Welcome aboard. You can follow the cave on Rumble, Spotify, X, YouTube, TalkStream Live, and what else is there? Well, or everything else. You'll find it. We're there. We're everywhere. Or you can just jump to the archives from the station and you can listen to us there. Platos Cave is a thing. We have our archives there and on YouTube mostly. Actually, yes. And I just haven't put them on Spotify yet. One day I'll stream straight to Spotify under its own channel. Wouldn't that be good? Ooh, yeah. That's what I'm saying. All right. You are hearing this via Revolution Radio. Revolution Radio, revolution.radio is the website. Name very clever. I remember you could only have .com, .net, .org and .gov back in the day. Now you can have .radio. How cool is that? Well, they've got it. We've been here for, I think this is the 14th year. I'm just guessing. Or something equivalent. I believe it was 2011 or 2012 or something like that when we embarked upon this stage of our adventure. Before then, I had a very short stint until we were replaced by a simulcast on Triple M. G'day. Oh, I'm on Triple M. No, I'm not Triple M anymore, and I don't have to do that voice. So it's all good, you know. The times they are a changing. You can buy some merchandise to support the station, or you can just donate. It doesn't matter which you do. And if you don't have the means to do it, tell someone else. And by telling someone else, eventually someone will have the means to help support the station. The station is in need of about $2,000 per month for all the licenses and all the servers and all the storage that is in need for everything that runs it. No one is paid here. We all do it just for the love of doing it. That's it. When do you find that anymore? Oh, NPR. Aha. I see. I made a joke. Now, a long time ago, we stopped counting the episode numbers, so I don't know. It's been going a couple of years now, and we do it twice a week. So, Shiny Side Out is it's our sister show. That's what we started with. Dave and Meckie's Shiny Side Out. Shameless cross promotion there. And it is up to, the next show will be 678. But this show is catching it twice as fast because we do 2 shows per week. And how cool is that? Now, you can tune in to us via an app online on your smart device, or you can just sit at home listening to us on a Grace tabletop digital radio. It can pick up this station. How good is that? Right? Woo! You know what? You could just dive into the archives and download all our shows in MP3 format and binge them whenever you want. Do that. It is protected by a password, but it shows you what the password is. Password and user and password shows you that. You don't have to worry about it. There it is. In you go, and you can just binge. In fact, you can. Before YouTube had the download just to your own account option on some things, if you were going on a long flight, as Meckie does from time to time, it's okay. You can do that with MP3s, and they're quite small. But if you like Spotify, you can do the same thing. You can tick on it. You can watch it when you're flying. Yeah, except for this show, because this show isn't yet on Spotify. Only Shiny Side Out is. But we are making headwaves into that. Headwaves? No, headways. There we go. Headways into that, and we'll be fine. Now, as usual, I'm broadcasting from Dark and Joan Country. Now, I wanted to say some things immediately, because I'll start with the most pressing issue for the east coast of Australia. And I've got it, if you're watching this on video, it's not bad. You can actually see everything. If you're in the chat room, then jump onto our live stream on Rumble, and you can watch this live as we go to air. Now, Cyclone Alfred. What is it? It's a Cat 2. That's what it is. It's going to hit somewhere, there's a map on the screen, somewhere between the Sunshine Coast and Brisbane. But because of the rotation in the southern hemisphere, everything south of the cyclone will have more rain. Because the leading edge of the airflow around is a clockwise direction, the land is on the left. So as it comes towards the coast, everything underneath the path, it will get the most rain, the most wind. It'll have the most storm surge, the highest waves, if you understand what I'm saying. So there is a zone south of the cyclone all the way down to Port Macquarie. So pretty much from Brisbane to Port Macquarie is going to be at threat of about a 1 metre, 3 feet of rain per day. Per day. It's huge. So there isn't very much convection in Cyclone Alfred at the moment. The convection is, because of wind shear, it's losing its mass. So it's not retaining it in the eye wall, and all the convection is circular. There is circular movement, and that's why it's defined as a cyclone. It's not a low, just a simple low pressure system, because it does have a warm core. And that's right. That's how all of this works. Now, while I'm not a meteorologist, trained and professional, I don't get paid to tell people what the weather is. You can look outside yourself. No, but I've been doing this since high school, so I understand it. I was, whether I'm still registered as a storm chaser. My credentials are all the same. I should check. I am a storm chaser. I do like to take photos. I don't really do very much of that anymore, but before children and shortly after having children, I was doing that, and I did sell one of my images to the newspaper, and it was the Mother's Day storm over Sydney. It was a fantastic shot. It was a big lightning bolt, lit the whole thing up, and I was in the dry line, so it was just really pretty. It looked fantastic. They decided to buy it, and I said, you can do whatever you want with it. After you give me the money, I don't really care. Thank you. It wasn't very much, but geez, it made me feel good. It really did. Now, while myself and Meki are not in the epicenter, nor are we in the disaster zone or the impending flood area, I have friends there. My dad lives in the going to be soon to be affected region, and I have to uproot and go and help out, not as a drama tourist, because that's really bad. You just put yourself in danger. But once it all starts to, come back together again, I've got a generator. If he loses power, I can take that up there, and I can help his food alive and keep him alive, as I've done for months and months and months already. I do like it up there. I really do. I can't work when I'm up there, so former employer said. So it's better, at least if it happens now, not so bad. But I am job hunting, so if anyone knows an enterprise architect role available, happy to do that. Now, I wanted to say this. I've got some friends that are driving to safer regions to avoid the catastrophe. This is the hardest part of having something. Remember, if you will, go back in time. I think 2022, I think it was, when the Lismore floods happened. That was 22 meters deep water. It was crazy deep. And Lismore is a huge valley. The catchment area is absolutely fantastically large. And it just all rained in the catchment. And the water couldn't get out fast enough. And all of the tides were... There's a very long river, but it's tidal to a certain point, and the water couldn't evacuate. The drains weren't sufficient enough to be able to evacuate it from this. It's like living on the crater floor, but it's elevated. So all the water has to get through a single, almost like a single drain. I'm making this up just so you can imagine it. And there wasn't enough bandwidth for the water to evacuate, and it just kept building up. And there's a sign there, there's a McDonald's actually, where you drive up a ramp up to the McDonald's because it's above the floodplain, and it wasn't. It managed to reach the McDonald's, and the McDonald's sign was underwater. It's totally insane. And that's more than like a 2-story house high off the ground. You really do need to see it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just Google those things. McDonald's Lismore, Lismore. Anyway, now I've been watching the news as we're getting closer to impact, and impact should be somewhere Thursday-ish this week. It was going to be Wednesday, but it really slowed up. It's only Cat 2, which is around about 140 kilometers an hour winds, gusts up to 160, thereabouts. It's only really 100 mile an hour winds. It isn't that bad. It's not that bad, but because it's coastal, and the area that it's going to hit is an affluent area, like the direct hit, the Gold Coast. There are people that live in, we call them canals. These are, tidal waterways where you can just jump on your jet ski in the backyard and go out to sea if you wanted to. Really, it's quite nice. But there's bull sharks now that live in that water, and you don't want to get involved with them. So people, when I was a kid, you could swim there, but now it's really not suggested that you do any of that. And the mosquitoes are terrible. They're not big enough to carry you away, but certainly they're plentiful enough to not ever want to buy a house on the canals. So right now there was grocery store shelves that are bare, I said, but what they've done, the premier, that's the head of the state, he has decided to lift the ban on restocking shops. There's a curfew during the day, so these trucks aren't all milling about, going about doing their thing during the day, and it's only restricted to a certain time at night. What they've done is they've lifted that. It doesn't matter. Restock whenever you like. Let's just do that, because we don't want to be held responsible for a rule that limits the shops restocking, and then something negative happens because they're all voters. So they're not removing the law, just relaxing it for now. So it'll still be there. Because we don't have 24-hour shopping. You can't wake up like you can in LA, or you used to be able to. Just go, I want to buy a record. I just heard it on the radio. I didn't go down to the record store. And it'd be open. And you can buy it. You can go home and listen to it. Yeah, it's content. Fabulous. No, we have set shopping hours, and after a certain time at night, the shops just aren't open. And that's kind of a culture shock if you come here from, certainly from LA. It's just not a thing. Now, one local store, I think you'll find this interesting, one local store in the cyclone's impact area sold 60 generators today. A very hard to move item in the best of times. Oh, but there's a disaster coming. Woo, yeah, that's it. Let's sell some more generators. So that they were pretty good. I think they were like 2 to 3, maybe 4 kilowatts. So not bad. Not kilowatts. Yeah, that'd be right. Yeah, 1,000 watts. Yeah. So that's enough to run a fridge, maybe a telly or a radio or something, so you can keep up to date, get all your devices charged, and maybe run your internet if it's still alive. Now, sandbags, another concern. There are many sites around the affected areas. This is for inundation, either from flood water or from storm surge, where many times a day they have sand being delivered. I think there was 250,000 bags already deployed, which is a lot. You got to admit, we don't like flooding. If we know it happens, and people tend to live where the most likelihood of flooding occurs. And I think with all the special rules around where you should build a house, you should not build it on sand. It'll wash away. That's pretty bad. Well, that's what pretty much the Gold Coast is. It's all sense of sandbar. So good luck. Yeah. Anyway, now, so sandbags are being filled. All of the fresh water that was available is bottled water, has been sold already. It'd be hard pressed to find any at all. And there's expected to be a 5-foot tall storm surge, and that will depend on the tide, no doubt. But we have a 1.6 meter tide up in the Gold Coast. Could be 1.8. So that can be like a 7 meter difference between low tide with the storm surge. It could be very 7 meter. No. Yeah, it could be 7 meter. They've already recorded wave heights of 10 meters in some. Kira Beach, if you know where that is, there's a surf comp on this weekend. I think they're crazy doing it, but surfers will as surfers do. And in a place called Surfers Paradise, to the south of that, you'll find Kira. It's actually nice. They have a really nice, a right-hander there today, and injuries galore. That's all I can say. But anyway, and we'll see what happens. Keep up to date on the surfing comp, whether it's closed or postponed for another weekend. I'm not sure. Now, let's just immediately say that all the low-lying areas will flood. It's an easy call. There's a place called Ballina, and it's actually an island. It's a sandbar. Why people build on sand, I don't know. But it's there's some rivers and bridges and everything that connected, and it's a lovely little town, but it's almost completely flat because it's a sandbar. And there's a river that comes from Lismore and passes it, and there's it's quite wide, probably 200 meters or something at its widest. It's really nice, but the incoming tide can affect the outgoing flow, and it's a sandbar to get across at low tide, which is treacherous. So I probably am suggesting here that when the storm surge occurs and the tide is at the right place, that we'll see probably a foot of water, maybe 2 feet, even possibly a meter of water covering Ballina. It's very rare to get that much water there because it's a very long floodplain, and it gets dispersed widely across the floodplain as far south as another like couple of k's south of the river. So, well, fingers crossed for all those people. And I've got friends that live there, and my call out to all my Northern Rivers car friends, Positive Traction, the group is called. Do stay safe. Make sure all your stored cars are up at your friend's place up in Casino. Get them out of harm's way. Now, what else was on the list? Oh yeah, all right. So, don't drive through floodwaters. It's an offence in Australia to drive through floodwaters and get yourself into trouble, because then you're putting the rescue workers at risk. It's not just a mistake. I didn't estimate the depth of the water enough. The moment you're in trouble, now you've got all of the people who are going to help you. Their lives are now in your hands. You shouldn't have done it. Don't do it. It's dangerous. And a car will float in surprisingly little amount of water, especially the new cars. The older cars, they can. Some of the older cars, I've seen videos of them, can go through water that's fairly deep, just above the axles. But today, you don't even have to have a car, with a 1.3 litre engine, a little hatchback, which basically is just a balloon with a small weight in it, and you're not that weight. And once the water is no longer clear and it has material in it, so if it has in suspension any kind of mud or debris, the weight of that debris adds to the weight per. Think about 1 kilogram of water is 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. It's a 10 centimeter cube. That same cube as muddy water weighs the water's weight plus the mud's weight, and the mud's weight is heavier. So it doesn't take very much water across the road moving at a high speed to be able to then lift your car and take it downstream. So do not drive through floodwaters. It's really dangerous. I've driven through still clear floodwater that it's been. There's a road called Ross Lane. I've driven through that when we had people there with measuring sticks, some four-wheel drivers, and they had the sticks to show where you could drive and how deep the water was, and then you just drove slow. You weren't even deep enough to make a wake in front of you, because that's what I learned, some 40 years ago. When I was learning to drive, you drive at a steady pace with a wake in front. You create the wake and stay at the wake's pace. That's if you have a heavy car and the water's still and it's clear. Now, the worst thing still, that same water that's full of mud has snakes and spiders and all sorts of creatures in it. And of course, in Australia, we have 9 of the 10 most deadliest snakes on the planet that you don't want to come in contact with when you're either wading through or trying to drive through any kind of floodwater, or if you've just gotten stuck. Say you parked your car and you go back to your car and it's up to the doors. You want to save your car. It's too late. Most electric vehicles, or let's say the electronics in the current cars, once your car electronics is wet, the car's dead. It's no longer going to operate. And I'm not sure about any of the EVs and how safe they would be, but if I was you, I'd stay all the way away from it. And given that if it's storm surge, it could be salty water, not fresh water, and therefore you're going to have electrical conductivity. of the water as well, and that will make it even worse. And I hope that no one gets themselves into that kind of mischief. Now, what was left here? Most of the flooding will occur south of the cyclone's path. Actually, yep, I covered that. So if you can stay away from it, the perimeter of the storm is about 1,000 kilometers across, but it'll shrink to maybe half the size, about 500 k's across when it gets closer to land. It doesn't look like it's going to worsen, and all I ask is that everyone's safe. That's it. And if you can, get out of there. If you can, just make sure you leave, you secure your house, you take your pets with you, and you're there for another day. And I also hope that the insurance companies don't abandon the people like the California fires. I really hope that, I said this cyclone has the potential to negatively impact the lives and livelihoods of 4 million. I mean, it sounds like rookie numbers, right, to the California fires and to California, because that's like 25 or 26 million. That's the population of the whole of Australia, right there, just in California. But because we're extremely coastal, most of us live on the coast. That, why wouldn't you? Except for all the deadly creatures and the irukandji. They're tiny, as big as your adult male thumbnail or smaller, down to about 1/8 of an inch long. Can kill you. It's a jellyfish, but only lives in really, really warm water. So we're kind of okay down Sydney way. But I hope that the insurance companies aren't at risk if the damage bill is too high from this. Because in the build-up to the California fires, the insurers removed fire coverage. That's really, who needs that? It's too risky, we can't do that, we'd go broke if there was a fire. But all the conditions are right, sir, for a fire. I know, right? And they've been deleting the fire stations, and there's no water in the water storage to power the what are they called? Hydrants. Yeah. So with no water in the hydrants, no water in the storage, and mothballing as many fire appliances as possible, what can go wrong? Oh yeah, fire. Yeah, right. All right. So let's hope that does not happen, because that would be the worst case scenario. For me, it's not a wait and see. I don't want it to happen, and let's hope we don't have anywhere near the amount of corruption in our political system as has been suggested there is in America. And hopefully we could see a Doge after our next election, which is coming up, I think, in 2 months' time. Anyway, I'm going to move on from that. The tropical cyclone categories is on the screen. It's only category 2, so that shouldn't be too bad. Now, next one, daylight savings. If you are in Australia and listen live, will be 1 hour earlier. If you listen via YouTube, Rumble, and Spotify, then the show will appear 1 hour earlier as well, because it's effectively live. But see, we post it to those platforms. It goes live to Rumble, but Rumble is supposed to syndicate it, but I don't know. If I upload something to Rumble, it syndicates it, but if I do a live stream, it doesn't. Isn't it weird? Well, anyway, it is what it is, and I'm learning. So if you listen, if you catch us in arrears via the station's archive, well, if it's in arrears, at least an hour in arrears, you're going to be fine. But there shouldn't be any change other than that. And then I think in a month's time, it'll become an hour earlier again, because this daylight saving change is occurring in Kentucky, and the next one will be in Sydney, where I am. And so we have 2 daylight saving changes, one where the station is, one where we are. And when it happens in the station, our show is on at the normal time this week, and then next week it changes. And when it happens at our time, it happens immediately here. But it doesn't happen for those who listen to the station, but only those in Australia. I'm sorry, I know it's complicated, but don't worry about it. I'm going to move on. This was the biggest thing that my friends were talking to me about this week. There's been a viral video getting around, and part of that video, it's some very well educated English types talking about a whole range of things. One of the topics they come across in this, I think it's like an hour and a half, is CDBCs, central bank digital currencies. It's, if you thought it's never gonna happen, it's only imaginary, nothing to worry about here, don't worry about it. When are they going to do that? They couldn't afford to do it. You're wrong. You're totally wrong. Now, it's been raised with me again by my friends mostly, and I think it deserves an update. Australia, the UK, and the USA are all slowly implementing the steps that you can call them technologies, really technologies, that bring us closer to central bank digital currencies. And there was something telling here. I'll leave it on the screen so you can just read it for yourself, and then I'll soon change that. After the Queen of England passed away and the chair was filled by King Charles, Australia announced there would be only one coin to have his head on it, as all our coins and notes have the Queen's head. It's kind of like a profile shot, kind of, not face on, but profile. And that's on every denomination, whether it's coin or note. We all have the Queen's head. So it's odd that when she passed away, they said, "Oh, nah, let's not put his head on it." Now there was a bit of an uproar from the royalists. They're the people who would never want to see the removal of the Union Jack from the Australian flag. I think there's probably going to be a time when that's the case, but I'll continue here. The reason for not updating all of our currency was that, this is a quote, that there would be that the coins and notes would not be in circulation long enough to warrant replacing hers for his. It wouldn't, the notes and the currency wouldn't be in circulation long enough. And that got me thinking, hang on a minute, how can they say that? Because, I mean, coins can last 10 years, 20 years, maybe. Sure. And people are losing coins all the time. They're spending, they get damaged. I know that really disgusting ones get taken out of circulation. People don't really deposit coins so much unless you own like an arcade somewhere, like a video machine arcade or something, where coins are being used all the time. You want to cash it in. I can imagine that would be from 40 years ago. That would be the reason you'd be putting coins in. Or if you're a parking meter place, but now all the parking meters are digital. You just tap with your phone or a card or your watch or whatever you got. And we're moving already towards a cashless society. There's still money, but we're removing the amount of cash. Now, another little hint was that the secure trucks that you see that carry cash around, there's always a heist in some movie. these are those heavily, like Armor Guard, or who, I don't know who your companies are, but some, you know, heavily fortified truck drives around and they go to a bank. A guard will step out and fully armed. There's always a few in the truck, and then they take a trolley full of cash inside the bank, and they're all armed, and they come back empty, and they drive off and go to the next place. So if you remember Groundhog Day, where the guy spills the coins and he goes one, like, I think he counts back from 10 or something, and then car, wind, there's a dog, spill the coins, you know, that was one of those trucks, one of those secure trucks. So once the central bank digital currencies are in place, there becomes a new way of thinking about this imaginary almost money. Yes, stay with me here. And it's not quite the same as cash. Not quite the same. We haven't been a cash-only society for a very long time now. So I think 1985 is when I started working, and I got a bank account, and I had a card. It looked like a credit card, but it wasn't. It was just a savings card, and I could use that in an ATM, and I could get money out, and I would use cash. I'd be paid, and when I first started, I was paid. The pay lady came around with an envelope with my name on it, and she handed me the envelope with the money in it, and there was banknotes and coins. Fantastic. It had the amount and the breakdown of what that was inside the envelope. Then I would take that to the bank, and I would bank the money. So I deposit the money into the bank, and I could then use my ATM card to take it out wherever I was. I didn't have to walk around with all the cash in my wallet. You have to think about the amount of risk that had eliminated. The risk was the card, but the card had a PIN number, and so at least you had some protection that if someone stole the card, they couldn't, you know, how many guesses for a 4-digit PIN code are there? Quite a lot. So I think it's 4 squared, foot cubed, blah blah blah. Anyway, 4 to the power of 4. It's some big numbers, right? Now, that's right. So this imaginary almost money. Fast forward to today from my story, and as money is meant to be, this fiat currency we have is stored effort. That's all it is. So I work somewhere, and they give me money in an agreed value, and then I can spend it anywhere because everyone accepts this agreed value of money. It's not a barter system, and a barter system is great, I'm not going to lie, but if you in a barter system where you hope that what you have is worth something to a person from whom you want their goods or services. And a great example that I have is you make pencils, but they don't want a pencil, but you want their bread. So fiat currency is born and serves this purpose. It's fantastic that we have the ability to work and store our effort as an amount of money that we can then trade and buy the things we want. But we're buying things we want without any oversight. We're buying things we want and no one can see it. Once we started down the path of an ATM card, someone has to register a company to be able to accept the card to give me money from mine. So that's all the other banks, not just the bank I'm with. They're they became linked. Then the card, instead of just being a debit card, became a Visa debit card. And then Visa, the system behind Visa and its transactions, became cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, to the point where they should be free, but they're not, because Visa make a slight amount of margin on all the currency that gets moved around, because it's a Visa debit card. You use it like a credit card, but it comes out of your debit account, out of your stored effort. There's only a limit to how much you can go into arrears before the bank will demand that you fix that back to a positive number. So it's not like a credit card, and there's no interest on it, but there's a fee for using it. And that's the beauty of that system. Once you've eliminated that cost, then who's going to want to brand it with their brand? Because at the moment, the banks don't care. They've basically outsourced that to a company who's going to make some margin on it where they can't, because it looks bad if we do it, but if you do it, it's going to be fantastic. So the bank already has fees, and any money that's stored in the bank, don't you make this, take this the wrong way, but they'll invest your money in a short-term market for their own profit, and then it's there if you needed to take it out. Does it matter? Not really. It doesn't matter as long as not everyone wants to take their money out, because in that system, the bank doesn't have it all on hand ready to give out, and that can cause what's called a bank run, which are bad, because then the bank can't deliver to everybody. It's like a Ponzi scheme. I'm just saying it's like one. I'm not saying it is one. I'm not revealing any information here, which is, insider or anything, or I'm not. What it is to the bank is an expensive venture. In Australia, they link them all, so they all should be free, but they're not. There's third-party ATMs out there that can charge you $2, $3, or $5, whatever, per transaction. So you'll want to take like $100 out and cop the $3 fee rather than only taking $20 out and then paying an extra $3 for the service. It's ridiculous. Shouldn't even be a thing. But someone created a company and have those small ATMs in the shopping centres so you can get some cash. What is even the point? Because I can just tap, because the card has a chip in it, and it's an RF chip, and it induces a radio signal return with a little transmittal of some numbers when it becomes charged by the induction of when you place it close enough to the item, you're moving it in and out of a field, and that creates electrical charge, and it transmits its little signal, and it knows your card's ID. That's how that whole thing works. They call it near field contact. You don't have to actually touch them. I've seen people bend their card like it's made of rubber, bending it on, pushing it. Oh, it's not reading it. Well, don't bend the card, you pork chop. Just put it close to it, like even a finger's width away from the surface is enough for it normally to read it. You don't have to press it against it. It doesn't mean I can't think of an acronym that would suit it, but that isn't the purpose of it. It's so you don't have to touch them. So this is the big difference is that digital currency can be seen instead of cash. It could be seen. All the transactions are digital. So a digital currency that we're currently using right now, when it's not cash, when we're tapping, using Australia has the highest adoption of tap in the world. So all the cards have the chips in them. Your phones or your smartwatch, or people have a ring or a bracelet now. It's all tap, 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 tap. So the big difference between digital currency and real money, physical money, is that the digital currency can be seen, tracked, metered, withheld from you, especially if you go against the government narrative. You can be restricted access to your account, for instance. That's what can happen. Much more powerful it is, much more powerful than physical money if you're the oppressor. This new system can be measured and portioned out to you because of your social credit scores. I like to call everyone who behaves themselves a happy little Vegemite, because this was an ad that I grew up with. It's from the 60s. A TV advertisement for Vegemite. There was a tune, "We're happy little Vegemites, as bright can be," because it's vitamin B in the yeast extract. There was an yeast extract from beer production, and they found a way to turn it into a black tar, add salt to arrest the fermentation process. So it's excessively salty. It doesn't taste like chocolate at all. It's an acquired taste, and if you're not born with Vegemite on a spoon in your mouth when you come through that tunnel for the first time, it's very rare that you're going to enjoy it. So if I have a tip to anyone who's listening to this that isn't Australian and you have access to purchasing Vegemite, do it. Do at least try it. Vegemite, not Marmite. Ugh, rubbish. That stuff. I don't know. I dry reach every time I think about Marmite. It's very similar. And in fact, if you were to compare the two together, if you like Coca-Cola, but you just don't like Pepsi, or Scrooge Cola, or a no-name, no-brand cola that's just hideous, hey, it's got some essence of Coca-Cola in there somehow, but really they're as far away from getting it right as just urinating in a glass. Sorry that repulsed you, but I can't help it. Coca-Cola, to me, has out of the two flavors, it's a dead certain that Coca-Cola is what it is and Pepsi is their brand. I can taste the difference. There isn't a taste test. Remember the commercials they had on TV for the taste testing of two hidden bottles, and it's just a glass of two colas, and people would take the Pepsi. What was it called? The Pepsi challenge, I think. Yeah, because Pepsi were trying to beat Coke, and all they did was just have people basically being paid to. I'm not going to say that the advertisements paid them. I mean, they got their face on television. Who knows if they could have been actors. They may not have been. They would have signed their waiver to be shown on TV. You know what I mean? So it could have been the start of their wonderful, illustrious film career, being in a Pepsi commercial, taking the Pepsi challenge. However, you're not fooling anyone. I don't care who you are, unless you have zero taste buds. You can tell the difference between the two, and if you prefer one over the other, you'll know exactly which one is which. But because the TV cameras are rolling, hey, that Pepsi's great. I sold out a long time ago. So you've got happy little Vegemites, and that is my term for people who are behaving themselves as far as the government is concerned. In the UK now, we have people being arrested for retweeting someone else's post. This is rotten. I saw a guy there was a video today in England who police turned up at his door, not invited themselves in because he's a Christian. I mean, I don't mean part-time, I mean full-time Christian. And he'd posted something, and he said that this was the Christians' time to stand up. I think stand up and fight for what you believe in. Not fight as in, tussle with someone. This was, advertise your belief. I believe that's where he was going with it. Anyway, so the police turned up to his house and spoke to him. And there's very little, we don't see the pre-conversation. We've only, dropped in at the point where some are sitting in his lounge chairs and some are standing. And it turns out there's also someone there from a mental health welfare perspective. He's not going to be considered a happy little Vegemite. And if digital currency was in place, if CBDCs were in place in England right now, that could be really bad. See, once in place, there is no foreign currency exchange, because we'll all have our own CBDCs, but maybe there's only one CBDC on the planet. But the way I see it, there's two different groups of people who want to establish this central bank digital currency across the whole world, but because there's two of them, there's more likely to be two separate currencies. BRICS, BRICS, and the rest of the world. If I had to trend it out, that's how I would see that was going to be. I really would. Now, you think about it, there's no more printing money by way of coins and paper, maybe plastic, because our notes are plastic, our security all over the place. But, a CBDC has the ability to have short-term blockchain on it. You don't want long-term, this cent or this dollar or what have you, this dollar. You would never establish this with a lifetime of that dollar with a blockchain connected. It would be ridiculous. The amount of money that gets moved around in any particular country in the world would mean that you could never use the money for any short-term purchases. It could never be in a quick transactional account. I hope that makes sense to you. Right now, I don't know how big it is, but the last time I checked, it was like 20 gig was the blockchain size for the cryptocurrency of, what is it? Bitcoin. That's right. So Bitcoin's blockchain was so large that you can't add a transaction to the end of the list of transactions. It's like a receipt. You go somewhere and you buy something and you get a receipt, and there's all the things you purchased, how much you gave them, how much change you received, like the final price, any taxes, all that stuff. Well, imagine if that receipt was 20 gig long and it required more than one roll of the receipt paper to print out just to add your transaction on the end. Now you can see how ridiculous it would be for a single dollar in whatever currency to have its own blockchain connected to it. It would become unusable really quickly. So part of the WEF's grand plan, of course, was to establish digital currencies everywhere. Then we get what's called universal basic income. And it comes quickly after this, after CBDCs are put in. And to get it, you'll surrender your assets to the bank or the government to be approved. And in return, then you'll receive this universal basic income. But ensure you behave after that, because what they can do, restrictions can be exercised to prevent you accessing this digital currency, or even worse, it is given to you but expires after a month or two, only to prevent you from never saving any of it up. It becomes like a gift card that has an expiry date. You'll just have to use it. Even if you do have it in storage. You don't want it to expire on you, do you? You've got to think about this is the way the world's going, and they're not hiding it. I've got the Central Bank of Australia, its digital currency plan. It's already in there. They say it could be designed for retail or general purpose use. In theory, CDBC would be a new digital form of money issued by the Reserve Bank. And there's the music, guys. I want you to stay safe. I want you to subscribe, like, comment, and share anything that we make, especially this video, and cut it up and use it for reels as long as you attribute it to us. Please, if you can, that'd be fantastic. And I'll catch you on Thursday morning. Good morning to you, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for listening.